Good evening, or should I say, goede avond. My name is Renssen, and I am proudly 100% Dutch. The kind that brings you tulips, windmills, Gouda and Van Gogh, or as you would say, Gouda and Van Gogh. I moved to California 6 years ago, something which apparently qualifies me to come here today and talk to you about a scary word. I want to talk about change. Change is terrifying. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm in no way saying it's bad. It's a very important part of growing up, but it is unfamiliar and very unknown. To put it into perspective, consider a forest fire. While it might be scary and sudden at first, if you can look past all the negatives, it gives way to new opportunity. The old fire, the remnants of the old forest, provide a foundation for the new forest, the same way that my past in Holland helps me create a life here in America. I was born in Hong Kong, I grew up in the Netherlands, and then I ended up maturing in California, something which is still crazy to me to this day. It's very different. No matter how closely related all three places might seem, they have different ideologies, different customs, you name it. So fitting into a culture requires time and observation. It kind of goes all the way from how people interact to the smallest change in a greeting. I can tell you that transitioning from the cheek kisses, or wangkussen, to the bear hugs used in America set me up for quite some trial and error, as you can imagine. Just imagine 9-year-old me kissing and head bumping people, and then imagine the impression that must have left. So, rough start, but it just shows that no two places, just as no two people, are the same. Actually, our first 3 weeks here, me and my family spent in Venice. And keep in mind that I'd never been to California prior to this. So all I knew was from YouTube and social media. I mean, I could sing every single word to Tupac's California Love without a single idea what I was saying. But as I was saying, the first 3 weeks we spent in a small apartment near Venice Beach, which is one of the most popular places in America. Oh. And it kind of reinforced this whole idea I had, all the stereotypes that I kind of seen from movies and music videos. I mean, it had the expensive sports cars, the special people, and of course the very early morning surfers. I mean, it's like a page torn out of a travel guide. But now we're fast forwarding, and I moved here to the Conejo Valley, which, though it's very close to Venice, was yet again a change from what I'd known and from what I'm kind of been used to at this point. For example, one of the first things I noticed is almost everybody in Holland has a kelder, or what you would call a basement, and this kind of drew my attention to one of the less discussed parts of California, or at least in other places, and that was earthquakes. And it's kind of the first scary thing that I noticed about living here in this completely new place. I mean, I came from a land where our biggest trouble was a potential flood, maybe. I mean, we're called the Netherlands or lowlands for a reason. But I hadn't really thought about how different this geography would be. I mean, we used to joke in Holland about our lack of even the smallest hills. And meanwhile, I spent the last summer here fighting for my breath at the top of Mount Whitney. So it was something that at the time didn't make sense to me, even though it's fairly obvious now. But that's not the only difference, of course. I mean, when I looked around kind of throughout the days, throughout the years, I started noticing that one of the big things is that nobody here rides a bike, and there's a lot less green nature. I mean, thank you, drought. And that was kind of a downer for me because riding a bike is one of the first things you are taught in Holland. And similarly to a driver's test, everybody has to take a bike safety exam at the end of the 4th grade. So, I mean, safety first, right? And then it's also kind of my childhood. That was what I'd grown up with. And it's always difficult kind of moving past that one thing you've been doing one way your entire life. But kind of back to that forest fire, this negative part ended up as an amazing opportunity. I remember getting my driver's license, just 16, and I told my friends in Holland, who still have to wait 2 years at least, and they were so jealous, and it it sounds horrible, it's very gratifying, if I do say so myself. And it just kind of brought to my attention that I hated biking everywhere in Holland. I look back at it now with such wonder, and I miss it so much. But I was not a fan. I mean, I look very happy here, but I was not a fan of the cold and wet climate. And it just kind of brought everything into perspective. I mean, I feel in hindsight, we always see the things that we miss, that we wish we could have done, and that we want to go back to. It's kind of the fond memories, and we never look at the negative parts. I mean, I often choose to oversee the fact that almost everybody in Holland smokes cigarettes. I mean, that's not a good thing, just like there's a way higher alcohol intake in teens as compared to America. And that doesn't occur to you. You only look back and see what you want to see. But this is something I did not realize until recently. The me from 5th grade needed some more time. So 5th grade was my first year experiencing school in America, which was a completely new path, but luckily for me, a time where everybody was best friends. So I was an aspiring singer/actress, of course, and a great field hockey player. But despite kind of all the wonderful games of freeze tag and the new faces who greeted me every day, it was still difficult the first few months, as one would expect. There's this very competitive atmosphere here that completely discouraged me from pursuing my dreams of being the most popular movie star ever. And then, of course, there's the big issues, or at least in my opinion they were, and that was my childhood was on a different continent, and I had this constant language barrier between me and the rest of my peers. I never spoken English before then. So my best vocab word at the end of 5th grade was probably Wednesday. You know, really take a bow on that one. But this, as always, it kind of got resolved. So when my friends went to their computer classes, I went through the worst form of torture possible, a special English class. I was in a class with 3 other people, and we would switch between Rosetta Stone and Scrabble. I mean, school was still that easy. But this previously thought torture eventually turned out to be my favor, as one might have guessed. My English has improved by the day, and thereby my confidence among my American friends increased so much. So, time for me to brag about myself. Since the beginning of middle school, I have been in straight honors, and keeping in mind that 6th grade was only my 2nd year speaking English. And I kind of feel like middle school is where everything came together. It was really the place where I started finding myself within this new culture. I mean, I had my new friends that I still hang out with to this day. And then in 7th grade, I joined track and field and musical clubs and everything. And then I also tried kind of to put myself into the school, to kind of force myself into this new social chain. So I joined the student government, and I ran for a lot of positions, a lot of times. Sometimes winning, sometimes losing, but always accepted and happy. So then we kind of move on to the fact that this was not what I used to do. In Holland, this was not me at all. It was a complete 180. But that's not something bad. That's a part of growing up, in my opinion. That's me fitting into this new culture, putting myself into it. And I've also kept parts of Holland, of course. It's not complete new me. There's, of course, the amazing food, because we got our cheese, we got our bread, we got fried food. I don't know if you guys have ever tried Dutch fried food. It's the best. And there's also the parts I miss. So I have public transportation. It seems like a very mundane thing, very, government website thing. But I miss taking the train and the buses and just talking to people while I was waiting for a taxi or something. And then, of course, there's my best friends and childhood. I mean, they're miles and miles away, but in the end, it's still, whenever I see them, it's like I never even left. It's really one of those things you can just pick right up. And I don't know, I don't have any regrets. So what I kind of want to leave you guys here with today is I did it. I moved. I went to a completely different culture. I went to a different place. I mean, my family and I, we picked up our lives and we left. But it's okay, because I changed. I mean, it hasn't changed who I am. It's just changed the way I look at things. And you have the power to change. It's hard at times, and it's weird, and it's awkward, and it's head bumping and kissing people, but it works out. So just as I found my place, I wish you luck with your journey, or should I say, heel veel geluk. Dankjewel.